Hello, we're back with Deep Images, and we are still talking about strange love stories. I've got with me CF Roberts, wonderful co host, Justin Cotton, equally wonderful co host,
Hello.
and the panelist supreme, Bill Mulligan. And I'm Henry Cover. So we are talking about just unconventional love stories. We're just going to dive right in, and CF Roberts has the first one.
Yes.
To me, it was a tearjerker.
Yeah. Uh this one this one was very heavy. It kind of stayed with me. I saw it years ago. The version I saw when reviewing it was the director's cut, which is very long.
Mm.
And it had been so many years, it had been about 30 years since I'd seen it. So I was not sure whether I had just forgotten a lot of stuff or just new stuff was inserted in, but it seemed like almost a whole new movie to me. This is 1986's Betty Blue, which was directed by Jean Jacques Benex, um, based on the novel. I'm translating from the French here. 37.2 degrees centigrade in the morning by
Yeah, that title.
Philippe Dijon. This film stars a kind of iconic screen couple, uh, Beatrice Dahl as Betty, which I think is her first big breakthrough role, and Jean-Hughes Anglade as Zorg, who's her love interest slash the narrator of the film, etc., etc. But he's an aspiring writer and handyman on France's Mediterranean coast. He's forget the name. It's little beach town, but a little touristy kind of beach town. But he hooks up with Betty, and they become very fast, quickly involved. There's a fair amount of explicit sex in this. Not hardcore, but
Mm.
yeah, there's a lot of adult activity. Um,
It's
but
French. There's a lot of total female nudity, just matter of factly. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, fair amount of male too.
Yeah.
But anyway, they hook up. They get real into each other for a few days, and he works. He has no quote unquote job necessarily, but his landlord kind of makes him go out and basically paint these rows and rows of shacks
Mm.
that that he rents out. One of which is the one Zorg lives in. But Zorg is an aspiring writer. She reads she reads a manuscript that he wrote, and she's just blown away by it. Absolutely convinced he's a genius. Then he the weird disputes with this just nasty pig who he rents from finally go over the top, and she flips out and burns down the beach house, and so they have to hit the road. But she has a friend named Lisa living in Paris, and so they drive up to Paris and get with them and get with her, and they end up renting from her in her building for a while. Lisa hooks up with Eddie, who's a restaurateur, and at that point, I think Zorg Zorg and Betty both end up working in Eddie's restaurant for a while.
Mhm.
Um, doesn't go spectacularly well, as you might be guessing at this point. Betty is a bit of a loose cannon. Okay, she's a very loose cannon. Well, she ends up dealing with an absolute, as what they now call a Karen, as a
Oh, yeah.
customer,
Right. Right. Yeah.
and I think ends up stabbing her with a
Hmm.
fork. And
Hmm.
so things get bad. Amazingly, she doesn't get fired or anything like that.
Betty takes no shit. That's the trip about her character. She just
She
jumps
really
right
does
in.
take, yeah, to her praise and to her detriment.
Right.
She takes no shit. But anyway, in this time, she types up Zorg's manuscript and starts submitting it around, and it gets bad rejections. One of which is, I think, some guy saying your writing has all the characteristics of AIDS, which is pretty nasty. And
Topical
so
reference.
she drags Zorg all the way to this guy's apartment and busts in and assaults him and threatens him. And they end up getting arrested, and he's pleading with the police officer, trying to get her free.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually says, well, you know what, opens up his file cabinet, pulls out a big honking manuscript, throws it down, and says, and yeah, he's a failed writer too, so he's very, very sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, yeah, I'll let you guys go. And they luckily managed to get out of it. So Eddie the restaurateur's mother dies, and they're way down in central France in a little town in a little valley or something, a very picturesque town.
Mm-hmm.
And she owns a piano shop, but uh, Eddie, Lisa, Betty, and Zorg all go down to this place, and they all end up staying there. Eddie, I guess, technically inherits the piano shop, and he asks Zorg and Betty if they will kind of move down there and just manage the place for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so they decide to do it.
This is so
Sure.
resonant to me because I saw it for the very first time in my life only about 2 months ago, or maybe three. So everything you're saying is like immediately like washing through my head, so that's good. Now we just need it to wash it through your head. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Basically, over the course of it, they're down in the in this little sleepy town, running their little piano shop. There's a They end up becoming friends with the local owner of an alimentation, which is kind of like a convenience store,
Oh wow.
and
I learned something.
his oversexed wife, who was trying to hit on Zorg unsuccessfully. But things happen. He buys a car. He's all but abandoned any real hope of being a writer at this point. He's just trying to run this piano store and do the best job he can.
Hmm.
And they managed to kind of help and pick it up and kind of boost sales and whatnot. So they're actually kind of adjusting to life in this place and doing all right. He ends up buying a little piece of property out in the country for her. And the trouble is, she is a person, I don't know, it's almost like what she wants out of life and what she gets always kind of fails her expectations. But
She's a
at one
dreamer.
point, yeah, she's a dreamer, and she's got other problems.
She's mentally ill.
Yeah,
Let's just get
yeah.
out and say it. Nothing.
But
No,
yeah,
no, nothing wrong. So am I.
I think at one point, she punches through a window, and there's no actual diagnosis for that. After she admits to hearing voices after a while, which I don't know. In all honesty, it's just like that. That is an earmark to me. I may or may not be right. I may not have the whole picture. That to me is an earmark of schizophrenia,
Yes, what they call schizoaffective disorder now.
schizoaffective disorder,
Yeah.
and which I've got points I want to rant on about that, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
But he is going for broke, doing everything he can possibly to try to make her happy, and
Mm.
he just loves her and wants life to be good with her and wants her to be happy. At one point, he goes off somewhere, and I did not, for the life of me, remember this part of the movie. So I'm kind of wondering if it initially got cut out and then got put back in. But
Yeah, probably. Well, just
he
from
goes off. He goes off to some nearby city, dressed in drag, and robs an armored car company or something, like just this little
this
low
is Zorg.
grade
Zorg did
security
this,
company.
right?
Yeah, Zorg does this.
He's losing his mind too, being around her.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of
Uh-huh.
joking, but I'm kind of not.
Well, the one point in this movie, and the chemistry between these two actors is off the chain.
Oh,
There's kind of a whole story behind it.
it's
Like
pretty hot. Yeah.
they were actually very much involved when they did this
Oh, the
movie.
real people were?
Yeah, that's what I
I did not
heard,
know that.
Hmm.
or very close to it anyway. About as close as you could
We're going to
get.
cover a few
No shot.
movies in this session that where
Yeah.
the actors were involved off camera and
Well,
actually,
that helps if you're going to make. If I think if
and,
you're making a love story, if you
yeah.
can make that, if you actually have that there, the chemistry could be there. Although it doesn't always work. Eyes Wide Shut look like they'd never met each other in their lives.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill's selection is a good example because that's to the point where
Yeah.
they suggest well, we can just go have it and have real sex.
Yeah. So Betty Blue is really hot. But
She has to be being as crazy as she is.
yeah,
Right.
being as crazy. I mean, there's one point where he just walks over, and I think it's at this point she also, the big thing that prompts him to rob the bank, I think, or rob the little company, whatever it is. He's, ends up tying up, I think, 4 or 5 people.
Mhm.
But confuses them with a very fake honey trap. Okay, but she becomes pregnant or believes she's pregnant. She, you know, has a pregnancy test. She's pregnant. She's overjoyed. He's overjoyed. They're gonna have a baby. She ends up going to the doctor and finding out that she is actually not pregnant. In fact, I think she is barren or something to that effect. And she goes spiraling into a depression, and I think that's what prompts him robbing the place. And so he tries to please her with a pile of money. I think at one point or another, there's one scene where he comes out to the kitchen to eat with her, and she's seated at the table, and she's just got her face painted up in almost like this kind of deranged Ronald McDonald kind of face. Big red clown
Or
lips, and
war paint, man.
she looks like she's about to, like, just fall apart crying. And he just sits there and stares at her for a second. He grabs a big couple of big handfuls of the food that he's got in his bowl and just rubs them all over his face, and just sits there, and then eventually he goes over and hugs her. But it's just like, if you look at that, if the average American filmmaker or film fan looks at that in isolation, they're going to be saying something like, that is so damn pretentious. That is like, it's stupid pretentious thing I've ever seen. The thing you have to pay attention to when you're seeing that scene is just, and Anglade is just a hell of an actor, and he just the grief stricken look on his face, and it just like, he loves her to pieces, but he doesn't know what to do to make her happy.
Well, I think they're inserting absurdism on purpose
Yeah,
because that's she's somewhere else and she's taking him
yeah,
somewhere
they're
else.
ongoing.
So you don't
Yeah,
expect them
and
to just have there's going to be some interactions that make no sense. And you're right,
yeah,
most American film fans of a certain contingent, would be like, what the hell? But this is starting to
yeah,
remind me a little bit of Dusan Makaveyev, who I adore. So, I'm all
mm,
down with this, but the way you're explaining
yeah.
the
Well, me
psychological
too.
stuff behind it is great. I like that.
But it's just like, just the level of, but it's just like, yeah, that's the absurdity, unfortunately, that's, colors of their whole life,
Mm.
and their whole life together. And but so he does this whole robbery thing and takes her out somewhere to this nice seaside place, this nice little touristy town. And while they're sitting there, he gets up to get her an ice cream, sits back down, and she's kidnapped a kid. And she's just taken this random kid out of the crowd because she decides she wants a child, and runs off to some little arcade with him. And they're sitting in a little Native American teepee and display. And he runs up and finds her and tries to and manages to abscond with her before they can be caught.
Mm-hmm.
But things are just getting incredibly bad at this point, and the film picks up like at some point later, and he's driving home from a day at work or whatever, and an ambulance goes racing past.
Mm.
And he's not thinking a whole lot of it. And if you're watching this movie, you're thinking, oh boy, that's not good. And
Yeah, with
so,
her in it. Yeah.
yeah. And so he goes up to goes up to their apartment, and there's blood all over the place. And his neighbor slash friend, the guy who runs the store, is just busy trying to scrub blood off the floor, and she's taking her own eye out.
Mm.
And so he
This is around the
goes,
point the movie started to lose me.
yeah,
I couldn't sit and watch it all in one sitting.
yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
Yeah. Because
But
everything
he
you're saying up to
goes,
now, I'm like, yeah, yeah. And then you say this, and I'm like, my brain's going, what? Did I shut that out because it was traumatic?
and it's like at points in the movie, it's just kind of like, when they have the two friends in Paris and they're hanging out and spending a lot of time with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I love that. And it's just like, I love these four people and I love their lives. I love looking at their
Yeah.
lives.
They're so free.
And by this point, it's just kind of a spiraling nightmare. And so he eventually goes to the hospital. She's in the hospital. She is gone completely catatonic. They've got her on some kind of drug, and he's very upset. And the doctor kind of urbanely tries to assure him that they're doing what they can, and he freaks out and gets thrown out of the hospital.
Damn.
And, yeah,
He's like her
it's
common
bad.
law husband. What the hell?
Yeah, and so
My girlfriend's eye got poked out. I'd be concerned.
yeah,
Even if she
yeah,
did it.
as well he should be.
Mm.
But so he comes back later that night dressed in the same drag he was wearing when he robbed the place earlier, and walks into the hospital, sneaks by everyone, goes to see her, says his heartfelt goodbye to her, and she's still a zombie, with a big wad of bandage over her eye and whatnot, and grabs a pillow and pretty much pulls a cuckoo's nest on her.
Oh God, I didn't remember that part.
Yeah, and this is the point, I mean, looking at from today's vantage point and through the lens of our eyes and our time, it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, for like every person I've ever known who was clinically depressed or bipolar or schizophrenic
Mm-hmm.
or anything, it's kind of like, did it really have to go there? Do you not think? Thank you, Brody. Could it have
That dog
not?
doesn't like your movie. I'm sorry.
Nah,
That's
I
his
don't
problem.
Yeah, he's got a very short attention span.
Everybody's a critic, man.
Yeah,
They're pets.
but okay. This is the point where I'd usually mute the microphone, but it's my movie to talk about.
It's
so
okay.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
It's okay. I like to joke about it.
Yeah, it's just as long as it maintains a sense of humor, it's okay.
Absolutely. I love seeing animals and hearing animals.
But for every person I know who was ever going through mental illness, I'm like, did it really have to go that way? Did you really have to go there?
Do you feel like they're not taking responsibility proactively for their treatment so they won't go there?
Yeah, or it's just kind of like, you know, um, couldn't she have gotten better? I mean, maybe she couldn't have been what she was at the beginning of the movie. Couldn't she have gotten better and more well adjusted or something like that? But at the same time, it's like the reality, or when I say the reality, I mean, the fake reality of the fictional movie
Mhm.
kind of has this very, it's a romantic film,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's got a very romantic. And I used to have this big slogan. I used to, say, romanticism sucks, and it had a big picture of a syringe on it, because in a way, it's kind of like I equate that kind of fatalism with, shooting heroin or something. But by the same token, I mean, it works for what it is. And in the end, he's sitting there. He's gotten a publishing. He's actually gotten his novel accepted.
So
It's
he got
not.
away with doing that? I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I mean, he suffocates or
Right.
walks out in drag. No one ever knows it was him. But
Wow.
he kind of gets on with his life, and there's just a little cat they've adopted who walks in the window, and but he's gotten a publishing deal. He's gotten the book published. It's not the deal he would have liked, but he's taken it anyway. And he's working on a new one. And the cat comes in, and you kind of hear the cat. You hear Betty's voice saying, "Are you writing?" And he says, "I'm trying," and that's where it
Oh,
ends.
oh wow.
But
So now he's talking to animals. Well,
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we are all are.
it's kind of like a depressive Dr. Doolittle or something.
oh, we all talk to animals. It's when they talk back that you got to go get checked out.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, well, to them, they're perfectly sane. They're trying to tell you something. They're basic,
Right.
yeah.
and you're just like a dumb human. Can't get it.
Yeah.
But anyway, very heavy. Much of the critiques I've heard of her basically just maybe ham-fisted treatment of mental illness, and I don't know that I agree with that. I mean,
I think people
did
to spell it like certain people are used to everything being spelled out. Like you guys know
yeah,
I call them what's that word I have for literalists. So
yeah,
a movie like this, you have to go with what the character. It's cinematic. They're depicting their lives. They're not stopping and going, okay, now we're going to analyze Betty's schizoaffective disorder with some exposition. I mean, there are
yeah,
movies that do that, but this movie doesn't need to do that. You start to feel she's mentally ill, and you get concerned and try to figure out where it's going to go.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's like Jean-Jacques Bedex. I mean, does he have any clinical understanding of mental health issues, mental illness issues? I certainly don't know that he does. Does the character of Zorg have any understanding of
Yeah,
these
that's what I was
issues?
going to say. If
I
you
tend to think not.
Betty Blue, I get it. It hurts me. Not in
Yeah.
offensive, but I feel it. I remember it. I remember those feelings.
Mm.
You know.
So you've been
Yeah.
there. You've been there in some sense, one sense or
Yeah.
another, one way or another.
What are
A
you gonna say,
smart
Bill?
man
Absolutely.
marries his second wife first. But who's as smart as that? Not one man in 100.
A time traveler. I don't know.
Mm,
A
yeah.
clairvoyant.
The time traveler and his wife. Yeah.
So,
But
any
what was
final thoughts on this? Because this is getting pretty deep, man. But that's what we're here for.
yeah. Well, my return to this after 30 some years, I think what took me aback by this film
Hmm.
on this viewing, on this particular viewing, I'd seen it maybe twice before,
Mhm.
was it was a hell lot funnier than I remember.
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
there's that whole part where I don't know, it's almost like for a while he seems to be living a charmed life where he's trying to deliver this piano. There's this young gendarme that really wants to bust his chops, and he Zorg tells him that he's just found out he's going to be a father, which later proves to be false. But the the gendarme starts singing a song to him, and then they drive away, and you see the gendarme over on the horizon with the sun setting behind him, waving kind of slowly in his almost pageant like fashion. And then it shows kind of another long shot with the truck driving down a country road, and there are several people out on the road, and they're all waving in the same way. And it's like, you're kidding me, right? And just, I don't know, but there are a bunch of little touches like that I just found really hilarious. And some of the situations, robbing the bank and drag and whatnot,
Oh yeah.
and just like, it's like, wow, how did you get yourself into this position? But yeah, and so that was my first takeaway, having seen the director's cut. And after a couple of days, it was just, okay, that's sticking with me. This is a heavy movie. I mean, it hurts.
It does. Beatrice Dale is a doll, however you say her last name.
She's fantastic.
I mean, I can't speak for every male, but I mean, you can't take your eyes off of her. She's just gorgeous,
She's
and she has
beautiful.
that
Yeah.
wonderful French thing with the teeth.
Right.
That's
But she has to be beautiful. And that's one of the things I'm not going to object, because if I were making the movie, I'd do the exact same thing. But these movies that deal with mental illness, they're almost always way above average looking people, because
right.
nobody would put up with this shit if they were normal looking people. Just like, you know what? We wouldn't really like Bonnie and Clyde if they looked like the real life Bonnie and
Right.
Clyde, and not
Fair
two of the
enough.
best looking actors in Hollywood, because they murdered 15 people.
Yeah.
There's no
And then
sugarcoating on it.
and then look at the movie and what's it, Girl Interrupted. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But understand that women have to be attractive. I mean, what's this guy's name? Jack Nicholson is far from stunning Adonis. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But he was in Cuckoo's Nest, and it was like, oh, okay, cool. This
He's
guy
not
can be crazy.
he's not attractive to me, but he's never had any trouble attracting real life hot women.
Yeah,
But do you think?
he's been with so many.
And I mean,
women.
sure, part of it is he's a famous Hollywood actor. But I
Sure.
think
Yeah,
even before
yeah.
that, even when he was making stuff with Roger Corman, I don't think he was spending a lot of nights alone. There is a
Well, he was
certain
married to
charisma.
Shirley, what's her face, for a little while.
Yeah.
Shirley MacLaine.
No, Shirley Knight, I think. The one who was in
Yeah,
the
the one
Oh, there was
the
a
Terror.
beautiful lady.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, who's an uglier guy than Humphrey Bogart? Not a good looking guy.
Well, I think he is, but not conventionally
he's
at all.
masculine, but
Right.
yeah, who knows? But there's no accounting for taste. But I think everyone can agree that Betty in Betty Blue is hot. She's
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
and-
tolerate hot psycho chicks. Why not?
If you watch a French art film and has a female lead, they're not going to be mundane looking, and they're probably
No.
going to be nude through most of the movie. Like, look at La Belle, what's this called? I can always get the name wrong. It's like a 4-hour movie, and it's got Michelle Piccoli as a painter, and it gets that woman Emmanuelle Bayard, and it's her first role. But she's nude. She's just matter of fact nude, for like long take scenes, because he's painting her nude, and he's not getting on with her or anything. He's got a wife, and it's so weird. I mean, because their character. Sometimes she seems uncomfortable. Sometimes she seems like really into it, and it's just I don't know. You wouldn't get that in a Hollywood movie. You wouldn't, because it would stop the story. You'd be like, oh my God, look at this nude woman, and it's not a fast cut. They're just walking around
Yeah.
completely nude. You can enjoy the view if you want to. They don't do that in R and under movies, but.
Yeah.
But in France, I don't think it's any kind of issue or ever has been. I mean, Bridget Bardot was practically nude as early as the mid 50s in movies. And
Yeah.
wow.
But that's all I got.
Panelist Supreme Bill Mulligan, he is a podcast god. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to him, because he has a strange love story film.
oh,
I think everyone will want to hear
it's
about.
a strange film. Podcast God, boy, that sets up expectations. Okay, so there's a bunch of movies that I consider to be cocaine movies. not because they're about cocaine, though there's some of those, but they apparently were conceived and performed and created under the influence of cocaine. There's no other
There you
explanation. Um, and this one, so I was trying to figure a reason to wedge this movie in because it's one of my favorites, even though it's by many standards terrible.
Yeah,
Ever
it's an
fall in love?
ambiguous movie.
Yeah, yeah. If you ever fell in love with someone you shouldn't fall in love with, maybe you'll have some sympathy for the poor slob in this movie.
Yeah.
1985's British science fiction horror crazy movie Life Force from Tobe Hooper. Now, Tobe Hooper, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one of the most influential movies, and kind of bounced around a bit. Awful lot of projects that he started and didn't finish. That seems to be a constant theme. But his big break came when Steven Spielberg was directing E.T. and could therefore not direct another movie he wanted to do, which became Poltergeist. So he hired Tobe Hooper to direct it. And there is an incredibly divisive controversy over who actually directed Poltergeist
Mm.
because it looks like a Spielberg movie. It doesn't look like Texas
Yeah.
Chainsaw Massacre, but then a lot of things don't look like that, including a lot of Tobe Hooper movies. This was by far the
Toby
biggest
Hooper
budget.
really, in my opinion, didn't have. He kind of did not form a really individualistic style over the years.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
I
That's
wish he
true. His
had.
each of his yeah, because that's when you become like a great director when they
But
look
see,
at it.
and you know why?
2 seconds into a Hitchcock movie, you know it's a Hitchcock movie.
Right. And with him, with Texas Chainsaw, one theory now you may have heard is that really Kim Hinkle, or the person who wrote it, didn't help direct it, but they helped shape it
Mm.
almost as much, if not more, than Toby Hooper. That might be
Well,
why
the
the tone
yeah.
is different, but I don't know. I have
Well,
no
then
idea.
we also get into the whole thing that much of what we consider directors' um, touch is often the effect of the editor. You know,
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a magnificently edited movie. It's
Oh,
brilliantly edited, really, and that makes all the difference. And I think it could be easier. I may be totally wrong about this, but I think a great editor could probably take a bunch of movies that were not directed by, say, Hitchcock and make them look like a Hitchcock movie.
right.
So, but anyway, boy, this is very controversial. Spielberg was careful, maybe not always careful enough to give Hooper full credit. Some of the actors and other people on the production pretty much threw him under the bus and said, nope, Spielberg was doing it the whole time. Others came forward to say, no, he directed mine. It's controversial because it gets into there are consequences of taking over from a director. The unions are very powerful and very
Hmm.
strict about this. I think there were some fines over this whole thing. And I think I bring this up because after the success of Poltergeist, Toby Hooper was pretty much given by Canon Films. Oh, should have known that was going to end poorly. He was given carte blanche. Said, we're going to throw money at you. Make 3 of the movies you always wanted to make. He made Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. He made Invaders from Mars,
Hmm.
and he made Life Force. And what they all have in common is they bombed. They did not make any money. And sadly, from that point on, Hooper was reduced to making low budget stuff without the charm of Texas Chainsaw or Eaten Alive, making movies for like the Sci Fi Channel, just some really
Hmm.
subpar stuff. I think he deserved better.
Yeah.
But Life Force will be remembered because it's insane.
Hmm.
And he has said in some interviews that he was trying to make a big budget Hammer movie. And in fact, this does seem like a big budget remake, reimagination of one of my favorites, Quatermass in the Pit,
Oh, I love
Yes.
which
that
was
movie.
also
Yeah.
was that 5 million years to Earth, I think was the
Yeah.
American
Yeah.
version.
Great movie.
A giant spaceship, by which I mean 150 miles long, is found in Halley's Comet, and a British slash American space shuttle. The idea that the British are actually able to team up with us on anything like this is laughable. But okay, they go to investigate. discover inside this ship are the mummified remains of bat-like creatures and three naked humans, a woman and two men, in what seems to be suspended animation, perfectly preserved. They bring them back to Earth. This is a long sequence and even longer in the original version, which got edited down. And then the ship crashes. They no survivors. They do manage to rescue the cryogenically preserved alien humans, whatever they are. And then things take off. So here's what happens. You got to see this movie to believe it. The female is reanimated. She is naked for virtually the entire movie. She is 100,000% naked. But seldom has nudity been so essential to the plot. She's just walking around, this gorgeous creature, Matilda May. I don't think she did very much else, but
She
boy,
became an
she was
icon,
memorable.
though. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Totally unembarrassed by this whole thing. She's a freaking alien. Just when you think, well, you're not even going to be able to concentrate on anything because she's so gorgeous.
Right.
She's also got these amazing powers. She steals the life force, a terrible title. It should have been called, it was based on a book called Space Vampires, and that should have been the title they went with. They probably thought that wasn't going to put a lot of asses in seats.
It's the Colin
neither
Wilson
did
book,
Life Force.
Isn't that correct?
Yeah, Life Force.
I
think
love
so.
Colin Wilson.
And he wasn't happy with the adaptation,
No,
but
I know.
it was probably unfilmable. So when she grabs onto someone, they turn into these mummified husks. And then later on, the mummified husks, during an autopsy, come to life and grabs like the doctor, the pathologist, and there's lightning going between their eyes, and it's a very cool practical effect. I mean, does it look real? No, it doesn't look real. How could it? It's not real. It's an insane idea. The mummified thing begins pumping out, filling out, and everything, becoming human again. And the guy he's stealing his life force on becomes a mummy. So this is how these
Kind
things
of makes sense.
they transfer this. Yeah, the victims become mummified husks. Now, if a mummified husk, when it reanimates, if it doesn't get some life force, it blows up. So this starts spreading throughout the town, and it ends in, and then also we find a survivor. Here's the love part. Remember, and this is supposed to be about love story.
Yeah.
They find a survivor from the initial ship, the only survivor. He's the guy who I think a link between him and this female creature, and now they are linked together. And this poor guy, boy, he is just suffering and everything. And they take him around. They're trying to find him. This movie has a huge cast.
Character.
What'd you say, Chuck?
I said, is that the Steve Railsback character?
Steve Railsback, good actor.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing: when you watch this movie, it's got a hell of a cast, great cast, all of whom seem to think that they're in a different movie. It's remarkable. Some of them, like Steve Railsback, is acting his little heart out. He's swinging for the fences and seems very sincere about it. Peter Firth is there. He's playing it fairly straight. I think it's Frank Finley who is just like, the script is ridiculous and I'm going to perform it that way. You've got Patrick Stewart showing up briefly, memorably. He's all these characters who seem like they should be important, but they don't last long. Some of them just disappear, never to be seen again. Patrick Stewart dies. Another guy dies. They start bleeding. The blood comes out and forms Matilda May, and then she collapses on the floor. It's a great scene. I don't understand it. I don't know why it happened. I don't know what it meant for the film. There's all this weird stuff. She's shape-shifting back and forth between characters, I guess, but then she does show up again as Matilda May. I don't understand. A lot was edited out.
So
a lot of stuff that might have made sense.
What is the love thing? Now they have
the love is between these two. They are connected, and he is compelled to be with her and maybe help her with her mission. Okay. But I don't know what her mission is, to tell you the truth, because everyone's just going crazy. Now, toward the end, we go into it's by special effects by John Dykstra. Wonderful special effects, lights zapping around, people turning into zombies attacking, turning other people into zombies, going on and on. There's all that. It's going toward the cathedral. Why? Shut up. She's there, and she keeps trying to bring him back. He's like, close your eyes and let me love you. They're in love. They're
Mm,
in some weird kind of love, this connection. I feel like that wasn't intentional, but it happens because that's how things happen. Sometimes this
yes.
is clearly not the right girl for Steve Railsback. His parents are very upset about this. It's not going to work out. It's going to end in tears, and it does. So let me give away the ending.
Mm,
They discover that they can be killed by iron because reasons. And also, apparently, they've come here before,
right.
which makes Halley's Comet a terrible choice because Halley's Comet comes every 86 years. And, you know, I don't know if you all are what you would call, you know, fans of history, but we've got a pretty good accounting of the last few thousand years. And every 86 years, the world is not more or less destroyed by a giant alien ship.
Right.
It would have made the newspapers, even back then before the internet. But
Right.
whatever. So they go to the cathedral. Oh, the two male zombies that we thought were destroyed, they actually weren't. They shapeshifted into someone else. But
Oh
who
no.
cares? They don't really amount to much. But they show up there and he stabs them with this poinky thing, and he turns into a really cool practical effects vampire bat human.
Mm,
It's neat. None of this is realistic, but it's
yeah,
still cool.
it is.
And even and these are good practical effects, but they can't do what they need to do because the technology is just not there. But still, it's very, very cool and a lot of fun. You got to be having fun watching this movie. Um, Even though some characters are screaming their lines and some are just reading it,
What
you
is
know,
the
off the cue
fate? What
cards.
is the fate of this union between this human and
Okay,
the space vampire?
they come together, and I mean literally, they're standing chest to chest, and light is going up. It seems like the life force from all the humans that are being killed is being projected up into the spaceship, I think. And his friend Firth tosses him the pointy thing, the magical pointy thing, and Steve Railsback, knowing time to end this torture, stabs himself, which of course gets her too.
Mm,
And she looks at him with like, "What the fuck, dude?" And the light that's going up turns red,
mm.
and then they are pulled up into the giant spaceship, which then leaves. And I left the theater thinking, well, he sacrificed his life, and by killing himself, he sent not a life force, but a death force up into the spaceship, killing all the vampires there and taking off. But that interpretation seems to be something that I and I alone took away because all the other synopsis of this are just like, and then the light turns off and the spaceship goes away, probably to show up again in 86 years. Sure. So there you go. Did they both die? I mean, the last we saw of them, they were impaled on a big pointy thing, but they were still looking around. They're vampire. I don't know. But are they vampires? Why is she human? Why, maybe this is explained, but this movie is so bonkers and it throws so many things at you that after a while you forget.
Mm.
And maybe there's a lot of explanation in there, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
Uh By the way, tonight, not the folks watching this because it'll be a while, but for you guys tonight is a meteor shower. You might want to go out and take a look, kind of continuing with the theme here. Hopefully, there's no
Mm.
giant vampire spaceships attached. This movie stiffed at the box office. It
Oh
it
yeah.
Uh,
croaked. It cost something like $20 million to make. Keep in mind, 1980s, $20 million was a big budget feature.
Yeah.
Now it's a little art film, but that was a lot of money, and it only brought in about half that much at the U.S. box office,
Mm.
and kind of killed things. But it's cool. It's fun. Yeah, I'm probably stretching it, calling it a love story, but that is the central thing.
No, no, I think that's more central to the book, and I think
Mhm.
I'm not sure of this, but there was a while when I really followed Colin Wilson really closely, fiction and nonfiction, and I also am a big fan of Philip Jose Farmer, and Philip
Mm.
Jose Farmer's novel *The Lovers* was the first story of this type in science fiction, where you have a human who comes upon a woman who's not human, and he's drawn to her, and they have a doomed affair, and blah blah blah, and angst ensues, and that's kind of the template, I think, for the space vampires as well.
Hmm.
So it kind of filters down to this. So even they should have
Yeah.
played it up better. I mean, they should have really went deeper with it, ignored some of these other characters. That's just my opinion. I have seen
Right. Right. But the fact that he doesn't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on.
it.
It's consistent. I do like the idea of a human in love with a non-human
Yeah,
is a great theme, and one that I will probably
use.
many if I manage to keep on writing books, that's going to be a pretty constant theme because it's a great one. And
It's a great
I've
one.
always I've always liked doomed love. And I've said before, doomed all love is doomed, but doomed love, doomed from the start. Like there's no chance that if you could squeak, you're looking at this and you're like, you're not even going to squeak out a year of happiness out of this, but you fall into it, you can't fall out.
Yeah, the Bowman
You
is what it's
just
all about. Just that
right once
feeling.
you go on that, there's something that drives us. Great things can happen, terrible things can happen. There's just a nobility, a magnificence in the inevitable destruction of
Yeah,
something that you're walking into it with
so
eyes wide open, knowing
rare
that there's just no chance this is going to work.
is
It's going to
happening.
end badly. It ends even more badly than you imagined.
Yeah, trauma.
But there's something noble about that. There's something
Yeah, yeah,
noble about doing what I mean, love is our greatest ideal. So
yes.
to continue with it, even when you know it's not the right thing for you, there's just something great about that. It's when you go in knowing, oh yes, this like let the right one in, which I insist is one of the saddest love
Yeah,
stories ever. But people tell me I'm
Yeah.
wrong because the books made it into, frankly, the way they describe the books to me sounds more like Twilight, like everything worked out. My favorite interpretation of it is that little boy is going to end up being the creepy old pedophile that we start out in the movie with. He just serves her. He just gets
Yeah.
blood for her, serves her, wipes her ass, does whatever you got
familiar.
to do to. And vampires are very high maintenance, and that's it. That's going to be the rest of his life, going from town to
Yeah.
town and catching people until finally he's got to pour acid over his face.
Well, it's kind of
But
like
that
what
I love
Justin's.
that. I love that.
Yeah,
That's love though.
that
Knowing
is
that
love.
that's love when you go into that.
When the thing is, you've got one character who is exploiting the other character, and the
Hmm.
character being exploited, of course, is deeply in love and attached to the exploiter. But the exploiter, in their own way, loves the exploited too. There's
Yes,
a
I mean, and there's a
you know,
great tragedy to that too, because if you're an immortal, and most of the time when it's a human and a non-human, the lifespans don't quite match out.
mhm,
If you're an immortal falling in love with a human, that's in some ways worse because you're going to have to watch them age and become infirm and die. And this may be the latest in a long line of people that you've loved and lost.
yeah,
The average human will probably, all the ideal is there's one person that you love and they grow old and you either die first if you're lucky or they die first if you're not lucky.
mhm,
That's how it goes. But to be an immortal, to be a vampire or any of these supernatural creatures, there's going to be a lot of that. And what would that do to you? The one reason why monsters can be monstrous is I imagine after a certain amount of time, you just can't take it anymore. You can't take that much loss. And so you lose the capacity to love.
Well, it's
That
like
would be a
it's like
perfectly good defense mechanism.
yeah, it's like you can exploit this other person that you love, uh, but the reason you're exploiting them is what Justin said earlier with the crying game. It's the scorpion and the frog. In other
Mhm.
words, that immortal creature or the predatory. They may love the human, but it's their nature. They're inevitably going to
Right.
leech off them or exploit them. So
It's almost hard to fathom that the death of this human is not going to be directly because they are with you. That's how it goes.
right,
Mm.
That's the only possible scenario. Or the other scenario is that some Van Helsing type shows up and kills you,
right.
probably your beloved. Right after they kill them, they get you. It's just it's tough.
It
Um,
is. So space vampires. I
Space Vampires,
like
aka
I
Life
like the book,
Force,
but I like the
it's
movie is
is what
unique.
it is. It is unique.
When
It,
I wanted to see it in the theater desperately. Then everybody warned me and told me for years it was horrible.
no, it's great. It's
And then
great.
when I
But
finally rented it or however I watched it, which is
yeah,
maybe like in the last 10 years, I was like, well, this is entertaining. I don't know, it's not
it's
horrible. I mean,
highly entertaining. It's not good by most standards, but it's entertaining. And isn't that a good thing? I mean, that's not every
Yeah.
movie has to be a cult, has to be a classic of art.
right.
Um,
Every
I mean,
other one should be though.
but in terms of it does it doesn't quite all come together. You keep
Yeah.
waiting for all these different parts and characters and everything to come together, and they don't.
It's kind of like
So
what could have been
yeah,
movie
so I
here.
don't think he succeeded in making his big budget Hammer film because the Hammer films are pretty easy to follow. They've got a strong narrative
Mm,
storyline, maybe sometimes a little simple, but I'm not confused.
right.
And it would have been interesting to see if someone like who was it, Nigel, who did Quatermass,
Nigel
not
Neal.
Nigel Neal.
Yeah.
If Nigel Neal could have maybe taken a crack at something like that,
Colin
take
would.
that
That
book
would
and
have been
try to,
amazing.
yeah,
That
I'm
would have
sure Colin would still not be happy because it's you write a book, I'm sure he did not write that book thinking it was going to be a movie.
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, he did two for he did that one and he did I don't remember the publisher, but he did the Mind Parasites, which is set in the Cthulhu mythos. I think I still have a copy. Uh, his novels are they're weird. I mean, his nonfiction is so philosophical and accessible though. It's so deep and interesting. And I learned so much about existentialism and all this stuff from him. And the occult. He wrote a book called The Occult. When he started writing it, he was a skeptic. When he finished
Hmm.
it, he was a believer. And then he wrote a bunch. Unfortunately, he wrote a lot of hacky books that Colin, can you write another book on UFOs? Hurry up.
Yeah, of course.
But the thing is, he's one of those writers that always was trying to grow and think and
Right.
express that to his audience. And in his fiction, it kind of comes through in a weird way, but not I mean, a good way. So
Yeah.
maybe one day someone will tackle it. I would love to see a
Right.
Mind Parasites movie personally, but we'll see.
Hmm.
Maybe I can talk to Richard Stanley about it. Just kidding. You never know. Okay, so Chuck, have you seen this movie, Life Force?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What is
Love
your
it unapologetically.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Oh wow, you saving the best for last, man. You summed it
A
right up.
lot of a lot of people, put this on their guilty pleasures list, and I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't think you should ever feel
No,
guilty about
Yeah,
enjoying
I
anything.
kind of don't believe in guilty pleasures.
no, and it's a movie that was even though it was reviled in the collector underground, it was before it went on VHS, and then shortly after, people started renting it. It was notorious. It had been cut a bit, for a while, and the whole thing with Matilda May became like a little trope, a little meme within that the community that we were in the
Yeah.
90s collecting this stuff. Because, you look at Video Search or any of these places that had a bootleg of it, and they're Matilda Gorgeous, Matilda May, totally nude, uncut, That was hilarious.
So take this movie, right, watch this movie on a double feature with The Keep, and then just
Yeah,
marvel at the sheer amount of cocaine that must have been consumed in the 1980s.
superb double feature. All right, well, we're going to wrap this one up, and we would like to know if you guys.
As always,
Yes.
like, subscribe, hit the thumbs up. If there's a star rating, give us the full 5 out of 5. Tell your friends. If you got friends who like movies, who doesn't,
Yeah, word
share this
word
with
of
them.
mouth.
And
There are a lot of chat communities I'm
yeah,
finding in Messenger, and some of them are starting to subscribe to their channel, and we're trading subscriptions with them. I mean, I trade subscriptions
yeah,
with them if they're at least a little valid. I mean, even if it's like a gamer channel, but the person seems to have some individuality, I'm like, sure, I'll subscribe.
yeah. And
It's no big deal.
explore the library. What number would this is going to be in the one,
200s
what? The 200.
this
So there's
episode. Yeah.
200 of these things of
Yep.
various lengths out there. This stuff is timeless. We're talking about old movies, so it doesn't matter if I get hit by a cement truck tomorrow, my witticisms will still be just as enjoyable in the years to come. So there's a
Oh
whole
yeah,
lot of stuff out there. So check around. You might find some movies that you like. You might find some recommendations.
yeah. And
It's
we're on Spotify, but we have a minor presence. But our intention for 2025 is to expand and get all of our stuff over to Spotify, so you can watch it on video or you can listen to it either way. And we're producing it with that in mind, So on Spotify, it's kind of a real old school podcast, but
yeah.
you can also watch it on video. So
Of course, this movie here is 40 years old. Good God. And for, I'm sure a lot of our listeners out there, 40 might as well be 400. We might as well be talking about the great train robbery. But you know what? I just want to say, viewers out there, I envy. You got a lot of gatekeeping type movie critics, movie fans who are like, "Oh, these kids don't know about Hammer. They don't know." It's like I envy any young person that I meet. It's like, oh, I like what you were saying about this movie. It's like, you've never seen a Hammer movie? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, feel bad. I wish I were you. I wish I were you, that I could start, and there's this whole bunch of stuff out there you haven't seen. They're
yeah,
wonderful. You're going to have so much fun. I would love to see these films again for the first time, but I can't. It'll be the 10th time I've watched some of these movies. I don't have that surprise anymore. I would love to be able to go back and forget. What was that movie with Drew Barrymore where she got brain damage and every day was like the beginning? Oh, what a dream. That's wonderful. I tell my wife, just put the same Godzilla, put Gojira on, and let me watch it for the first time every day for the rest of my life. So, but anyway, please
okay,
like, subscribe,
yes,
and
we'll see you soon.
thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.